Shalom, brother and sister truth seekers. I'm a little excited. I have sought to understand this 365.24 whatever number that we hear and that's so common these days, and I've tried to understand, like, where are they squeezing in this extra 0.24 days in a year? Like, it just doesn't make sense. Where is it coming from? I don't get it. Like, obviously, there's not a quarter of a day in a year, so what's going on? Well, something occurred to me recently, and I think I know how to finally understand this and explain this in layman's terms. And, well, you have to understand a little bit about calendar history, and I mean, I'm only going to go as far back as the Julius calendar and the Gregorian calendar, or Julian calendar, I think, was a 365-day calendar, and then Pope Gregory came along and he had to fix the calendar. And you have to understand, the reason why they fix these calendars is to try and stay in sync with the seasons. Like, this is, I don't know, this might be really basic for some people out there, and I mean, maybe we were all kind of aware of it, maybe this is just something for me, but this is huge, and I think it's not, I've not been putting two and two together. But you have to understand that all of these intercalations, I mean, their goal is they are trying to stay in sync with the seasons. There is a seasonal year cycle. It's 4 seasons in a year. And that's what all these man-made attempts are, to try and sync up with this seasonal year. And, sometimes in the Gregorian calendar, it's the leap year. Sometimes in Jewish calendars, it's the leap month. And then in other calendars more recently, you might be hearing about leap weeks. But the point is, they are trying to keep the year in sync with the seasons as much as possible. And what causes the seasons? Think about that for a minute. What causes the seasons? And I'm going to hit you with it in layman's terms here in a minute. But, I mean, I tried YouTubing this and Googling it and just trying to answer this 365.24 day question. I've got out spreadsheets and tried to calculate how they're blending in a couple seconds every day or something to all add up to that. And I just haven't ever found complete peace. And when I YouTubed it, I was just getting a whole bunch of high-polluting scientific jibber-jabber that's just like, oh, the mass of this and the mass of that, and this spins faster and whatnot, and whatever. But it never really explained it simplistically. And what it is what causes the seasons? We all learned some variation of this in school, I'm sure, but to refresh your memory, the sun causes the seasons, and it's because the sun, obviously the sun moves east to west over the course of a day, but the sun also moves slightly north to south over the course of a year. And I think the mark on the earth is like the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn, and the sun bounces between those two longitudes, I think they're longitudes, like a ping pong ball over the course of the year. And when the sun it's that north-south movement, and so when the sun is overhead of your location, it's likely summer. For example, in the North America, when the sun is above us in its most northern position, we're going to have summer and the summer solstice. And then when the sun is farther away from us in the south, it's going to be cold for us, and we're going to have the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year, and the summer solstice, the longest day of the year. Anyway, so the seasons are 300. Well, okay, wait, not getting ahead of myself here. The seasons are caused by the sun. This is the year cycle that everyone is trying to sync up with. And they use leap years, leap months, leap weeks. And they're trying to sync up with the seasonal year. That is what everyone is trying to sync up with. And what is that causes the seasons? The sun shifting from north to south gradually and from south to north over the course of a year. So it hit me the other day that the simplistic way to realize what's going on here is there are two different cycles that the sun is doing, and those two different cycles are not in alignment, or they're not perfectly divisible by one another, and so that's why there's this little leftover portion of a day. Let me explain. It's like a coordinate grid system. Like the sun, like I said, it moves east to west. That is one direction, and it has one speed going in that direction. There's another direction, north to south, that the sun is also moving. This second direction is a different cycle. It is not the same cycle. It is not divisible by the east-west cycle of the sun that gives us our days. And there's a lot more to look into here, and I'm just kind of tapping a general understanding of finally what's going on here. But I'm excited to start thinking more about like what's going on with the stars and different things. But so the simplistic way to understand what is going on with the 365.24 or whatever, if that number is true, which it honestly does seem like it must be true, because the Gregorian calendar has kept in sync with the seasons for the past many hundred years. So it seems to be doing pretty good. So I don't know if it's exact, and I'm not saying that necessarily Enoch is wrong when it comes to the 364. It could be, but I think there might be more thinking to do about that. But just focusing on just the sun and that 365.24 day that seems to be so prevalent nowadays. The thing is, that is how long it takes. That is a year cycle, 365.25, but you have to understand which year cycle that is. It's the seasonal year cycle. If it's correct, 365.25 days, or whatever it is how long it takes the sun to do its north-south cycle. North-south and south-north. That year cycle, that seasonal cycle, where it moves north and south, is for it to go from, say for example, from equator, maybe during the spring equinox, and then it starts to head north, and then it hits the summer solstice, and then it heads back to the equator, and then it goes past the equator to the south, whichever longitude is down in the south, either the Tropic of Cancer or Tropic of Capricorn, and then it comes back up to the equator. So the full loop of north-south movement over the course of a seasonal year is, just say, from equator to equator. And it goes north, and then it goes south, and then it returns to the equator. But returning from point A to point A is the equator, and it takes 365.24 days for that to occur, and that is a different cycle. It's a different movement of the sun, and that's why it doesn't match up with 24-hour days, for example, because the east-west movement is not exactly divisible. Like the seasonal cycle is not exactly divisible by what we witness as a 24-hour day, approximately 24-hour days. They are not divisible by one another. And I've done, like I said, this is assuming after hundreds of years the Gregorian calendar has stayed in sync with the seasons. So they are correctly understanding that the seasonal year is 365.25 days. They might not be understanding how to intercalate according to the Creator's method of intercalation, but that is that's what's going on with the 365.24, I think. And I've seen this in Stellarium. I don't think Stellarium is 100% correct in its programming, because I believe there are special things that happened that I've been calling sign days. And I will include a link in the description. Actually, I've learned how to include like those little, I forgot what they call them, but little, I'll have a link in the end of this video for my video about Stellarium and my video talking about the sign days. You can just click on them right on the video. But there are these things going on, and in Stellarium, for example, I was trying to answer the question of where time began. If it was a moment of time, or if it's a whole day-long event. And you'll just have to watch those videos to refresh your memory. But there is, again, Stellarium is program software, but let's talk about it anyway, because I don't think they're exactly right, but they might be kind of close. And what's going on, if you look at Stellarium, and you look at the study that I performed, I was trying to figure out when the winter solstice occurs, and you can figure that out in Stellarium as opposed to the spring equinox, or equinox events. I've said it very early on. I've always had my suspicions about equinox events, and I've got another video. Unfortunately, I think I can only include 2 links at the end of the video at a time, or maybe I'll try and include 3. We'll see. But I would include a link for that one too, but I've always had concern about confirming the equinox, because it's based off of geometry. You've got to put yourself in the shoes of the ancient people, and so would the ancient people have known how to go to Google and pull an angle to look at your angle to the sun? Would they have known that the straight line method yields the day of the equinox? Is that accurate? So I have expressed concerns, geometric concerns. You have the same concerns whether or not you think the Earth is ball or flat, and I'm still looking into that topic, but there are just concerns. But when you come to a solstice event, there is no guessing about a solstice event. You don't have to try and figure out this middle point where the sun's going to either be at a specific angle, or maybe it'll yield this special straight line. I have concerns about that. But for a solstice event, it doesn't matter. The sun is going to hit its extreme mark. It's going to hit an extreme northern position or an extreme southern position. And there's just no doubt about it. No matter what the shape of the Earth is, no matter where you are on Earth, you're going to see the sun. Everyone is going to have a chance to see the sun hit that extreme point on a consistent time. There's no guesswork about it, as long as you're measuring accurately. But so I went in Stellarium and I was watching the winter solstice event to try and understand where time begins and what the duration of a year was, because I know that is a firm, unmoving that's supposed to be a very consistent point to answer these questions with. Like, you know the sun is going to hit an extreme position. So in Stellarium, it gives you coordinate data, and you're able to tell when the sun hits that extreme position. And I have a short video, a long video, and I'll include the link for the short one at the end of this video, so you can kind of get the quick explanation of that. But what I discovered in that video is Stellarium is programmed so you'll see, I think in 2018, the winter solstice, it was, according to Stellarium, it happened in a moment of time. Now, in real life, I think that's going to happen, I think because of sign days, it's actually not going to be a moment of time. I think it's going to be actually a day of time, a special day that the whole Earth gets to see these signs, whether it's something like the straight line method. Like, it wouldn't be straight, I don't think, unless the sun was holding its same course for an entire day. I don't think it would be straight. You'd have to see a curve at some point. So anyway, but everyone on Earth needs an opportunity to see that, and so it's not just a moment, I don't think. But anyway, there's more thoughts on that in the other videos. But where was I going with this? The sun, I can't think here. Moment, right, Stellarium. So in Stellarium, it looks like Stellarium was programmed so that it's a moment event, like the sun hits its extreme coordinate and then immediately it starts to return back, and it doesn't hold on any course for a day, and it just kind of is a smooth transition constantly. And that makes sense from their calculation standpoint, but that might not be what's going on with the Creator's heavenly luminaries, and I could see how they could miss that because they're not paying close enough attention to the sign days and what's going on with the sign days. But anyway, in Stellarium, they might have that wrong, but there's something else that I think they might have almost approximately right, and that has to do with this 365.24 and the duration of the seasons. And remember, the duration of the seasons is tied to the position of the sun in the heavens. North and south movement, and so that's what I was looking at in Stellarium, north and south movement, when in the, I think I was looking at the latitude of Alaska just for consistency, but you have to pick a consistent latitude, I think, to understand when it hits that coordinate, extreme coordinate. But so I was looking through the data, and it looked like the sun hit its extreme coordinate in 2018, for example. I think it hit it, I forget where it hit it, but let's say, for example, I mean, I'm going to have a picture of it, so you'll see, but I think, I can't even remember. I feel like maybe it was over Greenland-ish or something, but the thing is, the next year I did it in Stellarium, and I looked for the sun to hit its extreme northern coordinate again, it didn't end up in the same location. So the amount of time that had to go by for the sun to hit its extreme location, it was more than 365. It was this 365.25 thing. It was almost 25% of the map that the location jumped because of this. Because the north-south movement, that cycle, the year cycle of the seasons, is not divisible by day increments, and that's why there's that extra 0.25 days, because it takes that much more time for the sun to complete its seasonal path. And so then the next year I looked in Stellarium, it jumped another 25%, and the next year it jumped another 25%, and the next year it jumped one more, approximately 25%, and that is where I think the extra day comes in. Like how we live our lives in this scientific world that says the years are 365 days for 3 years, and then the fourth year they're 366. But I mean, every year is 365.24 days, and it's like, how is that possible? But it's because they're trying to stay in sync with the seasons, and the seasons are what actually take 365.25 or 0.24 if this is correct, and there still might be a way to understand that from Enoch's perspective, or not, but I'm not too concerned about that, because I think Genesis 1:14 covers the bases pretty well as far as us understanding time based on the signs we see in the heavens. But anyway, what was I gonna say? So that is, how are we doing? 20 minutes. That's longer than I wanted it to be. I might make a really short video, so I'll make a short video and then cue that to the longer video. But that is what is going on with the 365.25 days or 0.24 days. And like I said, in layman's terms, the way to think about that is simply that you have to first think, you have to understand, calendars are man's attempt. Calendars, a word that does not appear in the scriptures, but calendars are man's attempt to try and stay in sync with the seasons that the Creator created. This perfect timekeeping year cycle, the seasons. And man has many attempts to try and intercalate and sync up with these seasons, but the seasons are perfect and they are a year cycle. And he has designed time in a special way, I think, to keep progressively moving. And you have to pay attention to the luminaries to understand what time it is, because they are jumping. This year cycle, if the Gregorian calendar is correct, it is jumping about 25% of the map every year. And so what that means is every 4 years you are going to have a different day be the seasonal sign days. The equinoxes and the solstices are going to keep shifting, and so you can't just try and make a solid number work from your. I mean, you can in a way, but you need to be watching for the luminary signs to understand when these sign days are occurring and when time begins, because that seasonal cycle is the year cycle, and that's what every calendar is trying to sync up with, whether it's leap month, leap day, leap year, leap week, whatever month. So but in layman's terms, how many times am I trying to say this? In layman's terms, it is simply, the simple way to think about it is, you've just got to realize the seasons are caused by the north-south movement of the sun, and there's the duration of that north-south cycle is different than the duration of the east-west cycle that we see every single day, and they're not divisible, and they don't line up, and that's why you've got a little surplus. And so it does take 365.24 if they're right, which it seems after hundreds of years they've done a pretty good job of keeping in sync with the seasons. It does seem like that might be the duration of the seasonal year, is 365.25 days, and that is what happens every year, and the location is shifting, the time zones, and I'm telling you, people need to pay attention to the question of where time begins, because the international date line that man created out in the Pacific Ocean is not a real thing. It's not real. Like, you look at that thing and it's a squiggly line. It's not even straight. It's just totally man-made. But there is a concept like the international date line that the Creator created, and it is it might be a stationary thing somewhere, but and this is, pioneering territory. I'm totally open-minded. We're looking into this with fear and trembling. We're being diligent to test all things. Just putting food for thought out there, iron sharpening iron. I don't have it all figured out, but I plan to keep studying it. But at the moment, it seems to be that the Creator has designed a special 2 different cycles that are slightly offset, and they're not divisible, and his times literally keep moving because of it. With respect to the international dateline, another simple way you can think about this is, if this is correct and the Creator's times work this way and his seasons work this way, you have to understand that the seasons begin based off of the North-South movement. Likewise, the year or the day will begin at that moment or location as well. And so when the sun finishes that North-South cycle, you stop everything right there, and you look to see, where is the sun now? Where is the sun on the east-west location? Where did it land on the map after it finished its north-south cycle? And that is what is shifting. It moves 25%. It appears to be moving approximately 25% of the map every year. And so the international dateline, the Creator's international dateline, is going to be zeroed where the sun finished that year cycle. And then the next year, the Creator's international dateline will be zeroed where the sun again finished that cycle, the seasonal year cycle, and it shifts every year. It shifts 25%, and we lose it because we're not paying. I don't think I've seen too many people paying attention to the time zone or the question of where time begins. But it is. If this is correct, and we're working on confirming this, we have I've created different Facebook groups dedicated to confirming the movements of the heavenly luminaries, and there was a great effort to confirm the summer solstice this year, and I'm looking forward to us confirming the other seasonal days, the intercalary days, the spring equinoxes, the solstices, the longest days of the year, the shortest days of the year, the days with equal light and equal darkness. And I lost my thought again. It's just the international dateline, right? So I'll have pictures. You can look at the pictures. You need to check out the other videos. I'll include link for in the description after this video. But it is simple. It can be simple. But we're so far removed from all of this, it might take you a little while to pray and think about. But if the data is correct, which that's another thing I struggle with, when we hear people read Enoch and then they hear modern science, Enoch saying 364 and modern science saying 365.25, it's like, how? Why? What's going on? But I mean, it seems to be consistent, and I just want to say, like I said, don't give up hope on Enoch yet. I mean, I'm not like, my interpretation of the Creator's times depends on Enoch. I think it depends on Genesis 1:14, but I do think Enoch does potentially have some help for us. But I think we need to verify the translation. And on that note, I have the interactive translation project. There's a group on Facebook dedicated to the luminary section of Enoch, but we need to understand consistency of terms. And I just wanted to mention, just as quick food for thought, I think one of the things that might be going on to explain this difference in Enoch is when it talks about the seasonal days or the intercalary days, it talks about days that accrue, and it talks about rendering service. And I think that the difference in the 364 and the 365.25 is because the sun is rendering service on the seasonal days, like this duration of a sign day. The other video I'm going to have talking about the duration of a sign day and how much time on the clock actually has to go by in order for everyone on Earth to be able to witness a sign that the sun is giving. For example, if the straight line method, I'm not saying that method necessarily tells us when the spring equinox is. It might, but if it doesn't, because there might be something going on, people. but whether or not it does, it still gives us the ability to answer a question of where time begins and how long these sign days potentially are. And I'm just going to show a quick picture of them overlapping maps here, but you have to realize if everyone on Earth is seeing a straight line pattern, in order for everyone on Earth to see that, there's more than 24 hours that have to occur in order for everyone to see that straight line. Like it has to be more than 24 hours. It has to be at least 36 hours for one sign day at least, and it might be something less, and I don't know if it happens for every sign day or maybe just the equinox sign days, but I do think we're getting close, and you just gotta hang in there. We'll figure it out, but don't let that discourage you. There's still enough truth in Genesis 1:14, and the luminaries are speaking themselves for you to understand what the Creator's times are. And so, so I guess I'm going to end this. I just want to say one more note. I will be making videos. This is kind of, it's been on my to-do list to kind of make an analysis video of the past summer solstice video. I'm going to continue that series with one more video, kind of wrapping it up. And then I'll do a separate video, or maybe I'll just talk about it now, but I wanted to keep my calendar thoughts separate from that summer solstice video, because, truth seekers, I don't want truth seekers to be discouraged or, potentially not get together to try and confirm the movements of the hem of the luminaries just because they've got different calendar interpretations. Like, we need to work together to understand, regardless of if we have different calendar interpretations, we still need to work together to understand what the luminaries are doing. We need each other's help to do that, and I think doing that is what's going to unite us in the end. Like, we're going to see what the luminaries are doing, and it's going to answer questions about time. But just because we might be thinking the calendar works two different ways, don't let that discourage you from getting together to gather this luminary data. But what I was going to say was I might as well talk about what happened with this past summer solstice and what I think that means for the calendar. So, we just thought we confirmed the spring equinox this past spring. We saw the straight line method, and then we saw things from the moon as well. And might have hit it hot and heavy and been, I always try to leave room to say, we might not have it figured out. Like, this is only what it seems to be based off of our current understanding and the best attempt we tried to make. It's a current understanding, which could be subject to change after further study. But if you go back beyond that video, and I'll include a link in the description after this video for the video I'm talking about, but you will see I've always had my doubts about the straight line method from the very beginning. There are just some geometric things in place that are concerning, and it's just there's potential that the straight line method, in a nutshell, just might not tell you which day is the spring equinox. You're going to have to watch that video to understand the geometric things going on, but there's a possibility it just might not tell you. And then, so there's this thing that happened with the moon, and I don't know, just have to keep thinking about that. But what I want to say is, and it's what I said earlier in this video, there is no question about the summer solstice. There is no question about the winter solstice. If we can confirm it accurately, and I recommend doing that with taller sundials, Or there are a couple other methods out there. I saw the Squirrely Nation's YouTube channel recently made a line of sight device that's much bigger than the previous one he had, so that gives him a better angle, I think, a more consistent angle, because it kind of works the same way. The bigger his sundial device, the straighter line you're going to be able to get. If it's shorter, there's just too much tolerance at play. But the bigger things get, the better you're able to kind of line your sights up on things. So I'm excited to see what he's able to come up with 2 days of back-to-back data. But anyway, if we are able to work together and confirm without a doubt that when these solstice events are occurring, and again, it's just a matter of being able to see the movements clearly, and I'm going to show, I might mention it just briefly here, like I'm going to show you a picture of my sundial that I used for this past summer solstice. Like, it was a big cell phone tower, and when I recorded for the summer solstice, the shadow was very close to the base of this tower, and so I'm going to include a screen capture showing where the shadow is at some later time in the year. I don't know exactly when this was. This is from Google Image, but you can see the shadow in Google Image, and this looks like it must be the fall or possibly winter, but odds are it's probably not exactly during the winter solstice, and so the shadow can get even longer than this, probably. But the point is, look how much movement there is for this tall sundial. Like I said, I was down at the base of the sundial for the summer solstice, and this picture is showing probably not exactly the winter solstice, but I mean, so it could be, but look at that distance from tip to tip. That is hundreds and hundreds of feet. Might be, I don't know, I'm not looking at the picture while I'm making this recording, but I'm pretty sure it's probably like 300 or 400 feet difference. Maybe it's at least 200. But compare that in scale to a smaller sundial, and I used to use these smaller sundials. They were only 3 inches tall, little nail sundial on a table, and it's the movement from solstice to solstice is only 3 inches compared to 200 feet or 300 feet. I'm going to make the math easy for myself. So you have to understand, if the movement is 300 feet in, say the year was 300 days, just for easy math. Say the movement was 364.24 feet. That's how much movement there was from solstice to solstice. Or actually, I think the movement from solstice to solstice is actually only 180 days, right? Because from solstice to solstice is 180-ish days. So let's say the distance between my shadows I observed was 180 feet. I was saying it was approximately 200. So that means every day I should see about a foot of movement. And there are some interesting theories about how that movement gets less and less as you get close to a solstice event. My attempt to confirm that kind of got botched this year because I had to switch locations on my sundial, and I lost a whole bunch of things. I had some terrain going on. I had early morning going on. So I can't tell, but based off of what Squirrely Nations recorded, he seemed to show that this was so. So I'm just looking forward to confirming it for myself. But just be aware of it. But anyway, to make the math easy, still to compare short sundials to tall sundials, if you look at how much the shadow moved for my tall sundial, say it was roughly 180 feet. So just say roughly every day it had to move 1 foot. But when you compare that to a small sundial, 3 inches tall, where between solstice to solstice it only moved 3 inches, you have to divide 3 inches by 180, and that's approximately how much movement you're going to see in one day to the next. And it's microscopic. and I'm speaking this in my own frustration. I have never been satisfied with that kind of movement. It's just too close to tell. And when it's that small and that close, there are so many variables that can make you have the wrong mark. Like it's if you just make your mark too heavy, or you shook a little, or if the sun was slightly obscured by the clouds, that would make the shadow grow or the shadow shrink if you didn't have 100% illumination. And there's just all these variables that can affect it, and it's so small that it will make a difference, and it's hard to tell what you're looking at. But with a bigger sundial, you eliminate the guesswork. So all that to say, this past summer was the first summer we were able to do this, and there were several truth seekers around the world who were trying to do this with taller sundials. And, I'm just looking forward to us, learning more and getting better and better at this. And like I said, I'm going to put out another video to finish up the summer solstice series that we just did, kind of talking about everyone's results, because I think there are a few things to learn. I mean, I learned a lot. But the point is, if the results were accurate, it appears that the summer solstice occurred in the United States on the 20th of June, I believe. So that means that like I said, there's no, if we accurately measured the return to have happened on that day, which I think is very likely based on the taller sundials we were using and the majority of witnesses. I think it's possible. I mean, anything's possible, but it seems to be pointing that the summer solstice happened on June 20th. And so my theory is, and this is what I'm going to have to do, because I'm still thinking we have some big decisions to make, but I mean, we just need to be diligent, look into this stuff, and find your peace about it. And just keep praying about it, and we'll just keep looking into it. Do the best you can. We're going to have to make a decision. I'm going to have to make a decision on, when the holy times for this fall are going to be, based off of what I saw for the summer solstice, I think. Because, again, I have my concerns about the straight line method, and it's just, and the angles too. Like, these are the two main methods that you saw this spring. Like, the angles, how do you know what the angle is? Like, put yourself in the shoes of the ancients. How do they know what the angle is? And the North Star does move, I gotta say that. And I've had in my other videos, so like sundials that are sighting in on the North Star too, you gotta be careful. I've heard different groups, but another group lately emphasizing that the North Star doesn't move, and it does move from what I can see. In Stellarium, and I think I had a brother who confirmed it might be moving as well, but I mean, clearly in Stellarium it's moving. Like, it does do its own little circle, so if you're sighting in a sundial on that thing and you catch it when it's at the top or bottom of its circle, that might mess you up a little bit. So anyway, anything is possible. Anything is possible. But from the looks of it, it looks like the summer solstice might have been confirmed to be on June 20th. So what does that mean? And say specifically in the time zone of the U.S., and from the other data collected around the world, it looks like the sign day, it looks like the first person to see the sign actually coincidentally was myself, just based off of my location. But then Squirrely Nation saw it right after me, and then as you went across the U.S., I don't think we had any more. Well, I don't know. So then when we wrap around to Australia, they were seeing it still following, and then even in Spain, they were seeing it following. And so it seems, if this 365.25 day cycle thing is correct, for the seasonal cycle, and this thing that I saw in Stellarium is reasonably correct, then time is, that starting point of the day is going to keep shifting. So it might not shift, if it shifts 25% of the map in the course of a year, then I would expect at some point that, that's probably going to hit in the U.S., and it's going to you're going to, at some point, I would expect that people on the same continent potentially might see 2 different days, because, for example, the straight line method, and even a solstice event, like watching it hit the extreme mark. I'm thinking there's a possibility that the time may come where even 2 people on the same continent are going to see the signs happen on 2 different days, and maybe we've seen that in the past, and maybe that's why there has been some confusion in the past, like in the past 2 or 3 or 4 years, Jerry Morris and Juan Carlos and different people. I've seen different groups when I was looking into this originally claiming they saw the signs on different days, and maybe they were, because this shifting had occurred. But anyway, try to wrap this all up. As far as the fall holy days go and the creators' times go, based off of what I think the majority of witnesses seem to show this fall, it seems, I'm gonna go and say, like, I have to believe that Enoch I still believe that Enoch must be correct, and we're misunderstanding what is happening with the duration of a sign day and the time zones. And you have to realize Enoch gave a description of time from a certain perspective, like they weren't moving around the earth completely. And so the stations of the sun, well, yeah, I don't know. I think there's more to look into, and I think it can be figured out. But putting Enoch aside slightly, if you're going to go off of solar months and seasons, actually, I'll be interested to see what Google says, because maybe that's why. Because when you Google it, it's interesting that the spring equinox and the summer solstice happened. I think it happened on the same date that Google was saying it was going to happen. But the question I was thinking was, I wonder if we ask Google or modern science, what would they say? Do they say the 4 seasons are exactly the same time duration? Because, Enoch says they're exactly the same size. He says the seasons are 91 days, all of them. 90 days each with 1 seasonal day. So I wonder what modern science says about the duration of the seasons. And from the looks of it, I don't think it would be consistent, because I know the fall equinox projected by Google is like 2 or 3 days later than it should be if they were all equal. So that would be interesting to ask Google. But what I was about to say was, according to Enoch, the seasons are supposed to be equal. So, but if they're not, then that just gives us something more to think about. But, and maybe I have to look into that. And you see, the more I think about this, I don't know. I've struggled. I find it hard to believe that modern science's data could be wrong. And so what it might be coming down to is modern science's data might be almost correct, except they're just misunderstanding a couple things. And so, I don't know. It might be interesting to look into that. There might be stuff to glean from that too. But we just ultimately have to test things out. And I think we can confirm these things. But right now, until we see the signs for ourselves, kind of in this world of presenting theories. But what I think is... what I'm going to have to say at this point is, I do think the seasons, I've got this, I think based off of it could be wrong, we may discover this later is wrong, but I think the seasons have to be equal. I think they have to be equal, and I think what we're missing is the duration of sign days and the time zones, and we're missing the fact that the creators' times they might be shifting, and he might have done that on purpose so people couldn't just try and slap a number to the calendar and make it run and run and run, because the times are moving. He designed the north-south duration, seasonal duration, to be different and not divisible by the day duration, so things are kind of progressively moving. But, skunk. Just had a skunk in the road on my commute to work. Anyway, gotta open the windows, get some fresh air. I'm talking, it's going in my mouth. Okay, anyway, as far as the fall holy days go, seasons, like I said, I think we're just going to have to look into this. We're just going to have to keep testing it, going to have to keep measuring. But I feel like the seasons need to be equal. That seems to make a lot of sense, that the Creator would design them to be equal. That's what Enoch says. I mean, if modern science says otherwise, then we'll definitely have to be sitting on the edge of our seat to confirm if this is true or not, based off of the signs that we see. Close the windows now. But so if the seasons are equal, they're solar seasons and they're equal, whatever they are. And I think we might just be missing it because of the duration of the sign day, but we'll just have to see. So based on that, if we truly did see the sun hit the summer solstice mark, the longest day of the year, the seasonal day, that marks the end of the season on the 20th of June. So I guess that would have been the end of spring, and the beginning of summer is the day following. And so the day following, June 21st, would have been day one of summer. And so I think, I mean, like I said, I've had doubts about the timing, like the equinox events. We're just going to have to keep looking into that, but as you can see, I'll include a link in the description after this, at the end of this video. But I've always had my doubts about the straight line method. And the moon thing, potentially, given the duration of a sign day, that moon sign might be happening within the duration of the sign day too, for what I'm about to say. What I'm about to say is, the summer solstice doesn't seem to have matched up as one would have expected with the timing of the spring equinox. It seems to be one day later. And what that does for them, I mean, I have my doubts about pretty much the sundial method sighting in on the North Star, the sundial method using the straight line method, and the moon, I don't know. I'm going to have to look into that. Like, it might just be, it might still be working out, but it's kind of within the duration of a sign day kind of thing. But there's just, like I said, if we measured accurately and the summer solstice happened on June 20th, there's no guessing about that. That is a year marker set in stone. Like, we're not worried about if the Earth is flat or round or where you are on Earth. Like, it is, everyone on Earth is going to see the sun hit the extreme north or south position and start to return. There's no guessing about that. So that is a solid year marker to compare with. So, based on that, I think I'm going to have to say that the seasons are equal. That's my current understanding. They've got to be equal duration. And solar months are equal duration, minus the sign days. And I think it's gonna just have to be based off of what Enoch says. The months, the solar months, are 30 days. And so if we saw, taking time zones into consideration and the question of where time begins, if we saw the sign day of the summer solstice happen in the U.S., on June 20th, and that means the first day of the new season and the first day of the next solar month happened on June 21st, if we saw that correctly. And so then I would have to say I'm going to have to count from there. And according to my current understanding, it's going to be based off of solar months being 30 days, and it's going to be based off of also the sign day. Like, so we're going to have another sign day, and that might not necessarily be the straight line method day. That might not necessarily be the day that people are seeing with the sundial sight in on the North Star, or the day that they're seeing a certain angle, because what are the angles calculated off of? But it is, the check for this is going to be to see when the winter solstice is. And if my theory is correct, the seasons are 365.25, so we should expect the winter solstice to happen like exactly half of that. I mean, as we get closer to that event, I'll actually look at a calendar and project a date when I think that's going to occur, but that is going to be another solid year marker to confirm with. Like, there's going to be no guesswork with that, like I've been saying with the equinox events. Like, you're going to see the sun hit its extreme mark and return, and if you see many of my past videos, you'll hear me say this. Like, the solstice events are just so clear. They're easy to confirm a year marker, because you'll see the return, and so that'll be something to check with when we see the winter solstice this year, and hopefully we get more truth seekers involved to confirm that again. And I guess it would only be the winter solstice up in the north. In the south it'll be summer solstice. But anyway, solstice event, the next solstice event. But I think if modern science is correct and the seasonal cycle is this 365.24, then, I mean, we don't know exactly where time began for this past summer solstice event. We know, I think it was somewhere, I think Spain was the last one to see the sign, so that means somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean is where the day must have began. So if time is shifting, I don't know if it's going to make it to me yet or not. We're just going to have to keep observing to see if that pattern is even true. I mean, maybe we made some errors, or maybe it's not shifting like that, but I kind of tend to think it is now that since this revelation, I think I just had, like, the calendars are trying to stay in sync with the seasons, and the seasons are actually 364.25 days is the duration, and the seasons are driven by the north-south movement. But anyway, so as far as the fall holy days go, what was I going to say? The winter solstice will be the check. So if that's correct, 365.24, then half of that should land us pretty much where the winter solstice is going to be, counting from the summer solstice. So approximately 182 5 or 0.65 or something days will be, and if it shifts a little bit, like I said, I don't know. We're just going to have to watch and see. But that'll be the check to see if it happens then. That'll be a good check to confirm the duration of the year and to confirm what's happening with the shifting of the seasons or over, this moving of the Creator's international dateline potentially. And we will be able to confirm that if we're able to work together with truth seekers around the world for 2 or 3 years, we should be able to answer that question. Anyway, as far as these fall holy days go, like I said, it's just, maybe I'll show a picture of what the new projected dates would be. But this is based off of what we saw for the summer solstice, because that, to me, is a very sure year marker. It's a sure seasonal marker. It's a sure solar month marker. I have my doubts about what happened this past spring. The moon is the only one that kind of makes me have second thoughts about that. And so it'll be interesting to see what the moon does again this fall, and whatever it does, if it does it in conjunction or within the duration of a sign day, and it kind of makes sense as an additional witness for the dates that I'm saying. But the date I'm going to go off of right now, I think, is going to be based off of what we saw for the summer solstice. Just because of my concerns I've always said about the straight line method and these angle methods and the North Star method, I think it's the only way to be sure. So what that means is June 21st would have been day 1 of the season of summer and day 1 of the 4th solar month. So counting 30 days times 3, 90-day season, plus 1 more day. I don't know exactly where that would land, but when I get in front of my computer, I'll project that, and the calendar will show the projection of when I think the fall holy days will be based off of that, and we're just going to have to see. see what the moon does, see what the straight line method does. And I mean, I have a lot more I'd like to say, because it's interesting how Google is saying the fall equinox is going to happen 2 or 3 days later than by anyone's standards. It would seem to make sense that it would happen, but this might be because I remember last fall I believe if you check my fall equinox 2018 video, I believed I ended up seeing the fall equinox on the Google proclaimed fall equinox, and actually I saw the spring equinox on the Google proclaimed spring equinox, and the summer solstice on the Google proclaimed summer solstice, I think, or maybe the summer solstice, I can't remember now. But it's interesting to note that they were either very, very close or right on top of each other, and so what that means for the fall is it might have to do with partially what I've been saying, the geometry and the straight line method, and or possibly are the season durations consistent? Are they equal or not equal? And I mean, it might have to do with round Earth versus flat Earth. I mean, because if you think about that flat Earth model for a second, like when they've got the sun spinning in the north circle, it's the smallest circle, but by the time it gets to the quote-unquote southern position, it's doing a bigger circle. So what is that supposed to mean in that model? Is the sun moving faster? It would have to move faster, I would think. But I mean, this has implications for the straight line method too. I don't know, according to that model, if the luminaries are over the dome or under the dome, and what refraction or light bending is happening, and what geometry has to be set in place in order for people to see the straight line. But if they are seeing it 3 or 4 days later than one would expect, according to Google, then one would expect if the seasons were equal, according to Enoch, then that might just be because like I've been saying, we're just getting the wrong day for the spring equinox and fall equinox because of these methods, and the only surer way to be sure is the solstice event, and then actually finding what day is exactly between those solstice events, and that would be your equinox event. And that's how you would determine the first day of the year, is by counting from a solstice event. And maybe, like I said, maybe the moon will confirm. But I think the only place you can be sure to get the straight line would be over the equator. Anyway, so I'll show a projection. This ended up being way longer than I thought it would be. A lot of food for thought in there, though. I appreciate feedback. This is just iron sharpening iron. For those who care about the Creator's times, I think there's a lot to chew on in here. And like I said, this is, we just got to keep working on our salvation in fear and trembling. And I'm not saying I'm right. I'm only sharing what I think I currently see right now. Could be wrong. We might need to tweak some things in the future, but I do think there's a lot to consider here, and I think we're getting closer and closer to truly understanding the Creator's times. And so I just encourage feedback, loving iron sharpening iron, and I guess that's it for now. Shalom, and may Abba bless as you continually seek out His truth in love with a pure heart.